Hello, everyone. My name is Payton Spear, and I'm the admissions demonstrator here at the Culinary Institute. I first began my education at CIA in January of 2017 for my associates in baking and pastry arts. In that time, I did my externship at the Four Seasons in West Palm Beach, Florida. After graduating, I came back for my bachelor's degree in business management with a concentration in Italian cuisine. So I spent my final semester in Puglia, Italy, and I'm so excited to talk to you about all that CIA has to offer. So for our demo today, we're actually going to be a part of a series that we're covering, which is the physiology of taste. Now, there are only 5 areas of taste that your tongue can detect. There's sour, sweet, bitter, umami, and salt. We covered salt last time while making our very own sauerkraut, and today we're going to be covering sweet. So what better way to demonstrate sweet than with sugar itself? So as you can see, I've got 5 common sugars over. I have granulated sugar, and then next to it, we have confectioner's sugar, which is also known as 10-net sugar, and that's because this has been ground 10 times more than the original. Next, we have sugar in the raw, which is just unprocessed sugar. And lastly, we have light and dark brown sugar. With that, the only difference between the original granulated sugar is the amount of molasses that's been added to it. Now, with sweet, it can commonly be related to baking and pastry, but today we're going to be putting it in with a savory item as well. So we're going to be making some homemade pumpkin pasta ravioli. So we're going to start by making our homemade pasta. I'm just going to take 100 grams of 00 flour. And 00 flour is only different from original flour because it's been ground 2 times more. So it's going to be finer, and we're not going to have little clumps of flour in our pasta. And the method that we're going to be doing today is called the well method. And that's because I'm just going to press down with my hand and make a little well with the flour. And that's so that I can have some space whenever I put 1 egg to 100 grams worth of flour. Now I want to make sure before I start that I don't have any areas where my well might break. Otherwise it can start to cause a little bit of a mess. I'm going to start with a fork, and I'm going to slowly combine the egg with the flour. And once we get a little bit more of a thicker consistency, I'm going to start using my hands. But I'm just taking little bits of flour and combining it with my egg. And there are some nonas that I saw in Italy who will do about 3 pounds worth of flour and make pasta in 5 minutes. I envy them, and I hope to get to that point someday in my life. So you can see that it's starting to come together. Just taking a little bit more, making my well a little bit bigger. And I have some flour on the side because it really does depend on different factors of how much flour you're going to need. And that's because if the weather is too rainy and there's too much humidity, you're going to need a little bit more flour. But it's nice and sunny here in Hyde Park, so I think we should be good. We've got a perfect fall day outside. You can see that it's starting to come together. It's not really spreading as much as it did in the beginning. I'm using my fork to scrape the bottom of it and make sure that we have all of that egg in there. Alrighty, I'm packing it in. I don't want to waste any of my flour. Now that it's started to combine, I'm going to switch over to using my hand. I'm going to lightly tap the flour. I'm just almost folding it over as gently as I can because I don't want my hands to stick. We're just about to the next stage of folding in the pasta. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to switch from lightly tapping it with my hand to applying pressure with this part. I want to use as much muscle as possible to put pressure on my pasta. I'm just folding over, making sure that all of that pasta gets well combined. And as you can probably see, the pasta gets the color from the eggs. If you want to have this beautiful golden pasta, you can actually find different eggs because of what the chickens have been fed. So in Italy, they had specific eggs for pasta where the chickens had been fed red pepper. And they had this beautiful, almost like red color. So I'm just gonna get some of that extra flour. I'm gonna keep pressing. Alrighty. We're just about there. You can see how it's combined so much since we started. And it doesn't look like I'm gonna need that excess pasta, or that excess flour. So it's just fold and press. Fold and press. We're just about there, a couple more folds and we'll be ready to go. While we're doing this, we're letting gluten develop into our pasta. If you feel like your pasta might be a little bit dry, don't worry about it, because while it sits, it is going to loosen. We are just about there, one more fold and we should be good to go. Now I'm gonna press it into a rectangular shape. And we have our pasta, it's ready to go. I've got a little bit of saran wrap here because I don't want my pasta to dry out. And you can see the difference of the pasta because I do have one that's been sitting here for 45 minutes, which is the traditional amount of time. And you can see how the color's developed, how it's that smoothness. It's not that tightness where the gluten's been developed. So I'm gonna clean up my station really quick because we wanna have a clean station. Also, I want to have clean hands when I'm working with my pasta. Also, I want to make sure that my hands are really dry, so that way my pasta doesn't stick. So while that sits, we're going to get started on our filling. I decided to do pumpkin because it's perfect for this seasonal time of year. And it's a fairly simple filling. So what we have to start is just 2 cups of pumpkin puree. And then I've got some mozzarella. I'm going to put about half of my mozzarella into my filling. And then the other half is going to be for when we top. For natural saltiness, we're going to be adding some bacon in, because who doesn't love bacon? And again, saving half of it for when we finish. Also, I'm going to add the sugar to it by doing light brown sugar so we get that caramelization and the Maillard reaction. This is about 3 tablespoons worth of light brown sugar. And then lastly, I'm going to add in some lemon zest. I do this because I want to get that acidity to fight the sweetness. When you're zesting lemons, I recommend always turning your lemon because if you go too far into the rind, you're going to get a very bitter flavor. It'll be about half a lemon for the quantity that we're using today, but it's always a matter of taste. Alrighty. And make sure to always scrape the bottom of the zester because there's always some good lemon zest that's sitting at the bottom. For seasoning, we're going to do some cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove to give that fall spice. Just about 2 pinches to start. And then we're going to do some salt and some pepper. You want to season your components as you go because we want to make sure that we're enhancing each component, from the filling to the pasta to the sauce that we use. Next, I'm just going to take a whisk and I'm going to make sure that I break up that light brown sugar because with the molasses, it does tend to compact and stick together. We're just going to whisk it until it's all well combined. Alrighty. Got my whisk. Now when it comes to filling your ravioli, I choose to do a piping bag so that way I have more control of how much quantity is going into each ravioli, and that way they're even. In this piping bag, I don't have a piping tip because like I said, it's not necessary whenever it comes to filling the ravioli. But I'm going to open up the bag, and then I'm going to put a bain-marie or a cup of some kind so that way I have more control and I don't have to use both my hands for it. We're going to take our rubber spatula, and then scrape the sides and make sure we get as much of the filling as possible into the bag. If you're ever in class, chefs will sometimes ask to see your dirty dishes because they want to make sure you're not wasting product. Because imagine if you're a store owner and like you're wasting your product, it's wasting money. So we want to make sure we have a good profit. When it comes to filling the bag, I always choose to grab it and do a light press to make sure I get all of that air out and I don't have any air bubbles. I'm going to twist twice and then let it sit until I'm ready to use it for my ravioli. So now we're going to switch over to our pasta station. And as I said, we're going to use this pasta that's been sitting for about 45 minutes to an hour. If you're choosing to make homemade pasta and you want to use it for example, the next day, that's totally fine. I just recommend putting it in the fridge as soon as you've made it, because then it doesn't have the chance of loosening up and then overproofing. So we have a traditional hand pasta roller right here. And I want to make sure that I flour the rollers as well as the table that my pasta sheet is going to be going on. And we have a setting of width for about 10, but it's going to go to 2 to 3 whenever we finish. I'm just going to hand crank my pasta. And I'm working fast, but I'm not skipping any steps because pasta can dry fairly quickly. But also I want to make sure that I don't go too fast, otherwise the pasta could crack and we could have holes to where the filling could come out. So chefs will definitely tell you about a term which is called sense of urgency, and that's what we're doing right now. We're just going. We're at about 5 right now, which is perfect. One or two more times and we should be good to go. I make sure to pull my pasta halfway through because I don't want it to lay over itself and stick. One more time and we should be ready. Perfect. Now we have this beautiful long strip of pasta. I'm going to take my bench scraper and I'm going to cut it in half, as well as take off the sides that are too short in width. Make sure that the area is floured nice, wipe off any excess flour from the pasta. And then when you're picking which strip to put your filling in, you want to use the shorter one because you don't want to have too much filling on the bottom and not enough layer of pasta on top. So now we're just going to take our filling, which is ready to go. I'm going to slowly pipe about the size of a quarter. And I want to give lots of room in between my dollops of filling. Oops, that was a big boy. Because I want to make sure that there's room in between for my cutter. Don't worry, the rest of this filling is definitely going to be used for my dinner tonight. And then we're going to take just a little bit of water and make a circle around our filling. You can use your fingers like I'm doing, or you can use a pastry brush or anything like that. Okay, so now we've got our filling done. I want to move the pasta one more time to make sure it's not sticking to the bottom. And then I'm going to gently lay my second layer of pasta onto my filling. Now when it comes to putting the pasta together, I choose to do 2 fingers around the filling to try to get all the air out of our pasta. And you want to make sure it doesn't crease. We have just 2 flat sheets of pasta. I can press in. And then I want to go one more time with a little bit more pressure to make sure that our pasta doesn't fall apart whenever it's boiling. Perfect. And the next step, we're going to take this cutter. And with the cutter, you can use whatever type of cutter you want or what size of ravioli you want, but we just have the traditional one today. And you're going to press with a lot of pressure. If you feel like your pasta is still sticking and it's not quite completely cut, I'm going to do a forward and back motion. Not at the side, otherwise, again, the pasta is just not going to come up, or the pasta is not going to stick. And then last one. Perfect. We're going to pull away our excess pasta. You can roll it one more time if you'd like to, in case you have any extra ravioli or a large dinner party that you want to make. And then I'm going to use my bench scraper to get the pasta off of the marble. I do this because I don't want to touch my pasta with my hands as much as possible. Otherwise, it could run the chance of losing its shape. Perfect. And until it's ready to boil, I always put a little bit of saran wrap over top of it to make sure that my pasta doesn't dry. But since we're going to be moving right on over to our boiling water, we'll be ready to go. With your boiling water, you always want it to be seasoned beforehand because we don't want to lose all that flavor that we worked so hard to make. And also you want to make sure that you taste your salt water because you want it to taste almost like the sea. So if you've been to the beach and have a big gulp of salt water, you know what I'm talking about. Perfect. So now I'm just going to take my pasta, fold over the parchment, and make sure I drop them at the same time. Any excess flour is going to stick to the bottom, so we don't have to worry about it messing with our pasta. I'm going to give it a light stir to make sure none of my raviolis are sticking together. Now I'm going to let that sit for a sec. We're going to turn our pan onto a medium to low heat and let that go for our butter. When it comes to pasta, you'll know that it's done because it's risen to the top. If you're making fresh pasta, it'll boil faster, usually about 5 to 8 minutes, and then dry pasta will boil within 8 to 12 minutes. The difference between dry pasta and wet pasta is just that you're replacing the amount of egg with oil or water. So I can already see that some of our pasta is getting ready to go. Letting my pan fill, I'm going to heat it up a little bit more, but I don't want to go too fast because I want to make sure that I don't burn my product. For plating, I'm going to use my dish that's actually been in the oven because Chef Odette taught me one thing in Italy, and that is that you want to make sure you serve pasta on a warm plate. And the reason that we do that is because we want to make sure that when the guest is eating their pasta, the bottom layer of pasta is the same temperature as the top. And I'm looking at this because I want to feel. Whenever you're cooking, you want to use all of your senses, from how something looks to how something smells to how it feels. So our pan is warming up. I'm going to just put the butter in. I'm going to let that melt for a moment. Then I'm going to check on my pasta. Seems like it's about done, so I'm going to put, you can see it's floated to the surface. And now I'm going to let that pasta sit onto a plate until we're ready to go. Shake it to move all that excess water out. Perfect. So we're going to let that pasta cool for a moment. And the coating for our dish is just going to be some light brown butter with a couple of aromatics. That's because we put so much work into our ravioli. We really just want to enhance the flavor that we've already made. We don't want to overpower it with a heavy sauce. With brown butter, you have to be very careful because it can go from brown to black very fast, and black means burnt. So I can start to smell the nuttiness, which is whenever you're going to know that your butter is about ready to go. And I'll be adding some sage as an aromatic to it to also enhance that savory flavor. I'm just going to stir lightly. I'm ready. I'm so excited for this. All right, this is looking really good. We're starting to get this. The reason that I add the sage later on is because I don't want it to burn by the time that the butter has browned. And then I'm going to add a little bit more salt to it because we want to salt as we go, along with a little bit more pepper. But one thing that I learned about Italian dishes is they're not overly complicated as people think. They're really just trying to mirror out the flavor of natural ingredients that they have in the area. So we're starting to get that browning. A little bit more heat to it. And the good thing about brown butter is you're not adding any extra special ingredients, you're just changing the taste a little bit. And instead of getting just plain butter, we're really enhancing the dish with another flavor component. Alrighty, just a little bit more. Alrighty, I'm starting to smell that nuttiness. And we'll be ready to go. I want to get this beautiful amber color. So you can already see that we're starting to get that browning, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Now I'm going to add in my ravioli. And I want to stir quickly because I don't want it to stick to the pan. You can see that golden color that we're getting. That's my reaction. That's the caramelization that we're looking for. I'm going to add in the rest of my sage. And you're only going to have this in your pan for 1 to 2 minutes. Because like I said, we're just coating the pasta. It's already been cooked. And we just want to get a little bit of that caramelization and that flavor in there. Perfect. Alrighty. It's nice to see it doesn't look like any of our raviolis have opened up, and that's because we took those little extra steps to make sure that the pasta stuck together. Now I'm going to turn off my piece. Get my gloves ready. Now we're doing a ready to serve food. So we got to make sure that we have everything up to code with ServSafe certification. I'm going to be taking my serving spoon. Another tip that I learned whenever it comes to making pasta dishes in Italy is you want to serve half of your pasta onto the plate first. And we're going to save the other half. So we'll be putting the rest of our cheese that we saved for later. And really any type of traditional Italian cheese is perfect for this. I just love mozzarella because it also melts at a high or lower temperature. So the rest of our bacon, because you can never have too much bacon. And then the next trick is to put the rest of your pasta over that cheese and that bacon. And we do it because we want the heat from this pasta to melt the cheese. The sage is really great because it also shows color contrast, because we want people to eat with their eyes as well. I'm just gonna pour the rest of my butter. And then we'll have the rest of our cheese. And bacon. And then you have it, a traditional Italian dish with a seasonal twist.